Welcome to the AFR Saints channel, where we provide you daily content on your favorite team, the New Orleans Saints. Do us a favor and hit that subscribe button. Be sure to leave your comments below and smash that like button. Who dat?
We'll start with the New Orleans Saints, but more specifically with Juwan Johnson. Because, like I said, there's contracts we could talk about, whether it's Alvin Kamara or Taysom Hill. But the biggest news is Juwan Johnson needing surgery on his foot and being out indefinitely. So Adam Schefter was the first to have this report, and everyone's since kind of followed up on it with the same source. And when you look at timeline, what the source was quoted as saying was, out for some time, out for a good amount of time, something along those lines. The hope is that Juwan Johnson is ready for the opener against the Carolina Panthers on September 8th. That is the hope. That is far, far from a certainty. They're not going to have him for the start of training camp, obviously, and they don't know if they get him back during training camp. So we can talk about the injury as a whole here, and we will momentarily with the foot. We'll let you hear what Dennis Allen had to say, and then the options for the New Orleans Saints going forward at tight end, because it was a position where, quite honestly, they were pretty thin, and now losing Juwan Johnson, you get thinner, but you do have options and one wild card, but there's also a bit of unknown with the majority of those options. So let's first start with the injury itself. It's a foot. It needs surgery. Here's Dennis Allen after practice today.
It's really hard to say because there wasn't any sort of event. It's his foot. His foot was bothering him, and so he's unable to practice right now. But it really wasn't an event, so I'm not really sure exactly, how it happened. And then we'll just see what his availability is and when he becomes available. Dennis
Allen would kind of go on to say as well that, he mentioned there, 3 times that it wasn't an event. They can't pinpoint an actual play or event that it happened, that the foot just started bothering Juwan Johnson during OTAs last week and progressed up until this point, now needing surgery. And he kind of reiterated the timeline that they don't really have one. It's very up in the air. It's very fluid. So where do the Saints go from here? Well, the obvious answer is Foster Moreau. And Foster Moreau took the majority of the first team reps in camp, I should say in mini camp here on Thursday, to the last day, and by all accounts had a really good day. Foster Moreau is they're known in this situation. Veteran player, familiarity with Derek Carr, obviously, local guy as well, LSU, from New Orleans, all those things. But is the complete tight end. You know what he can do with the ball in his hands, but also from an inline blocking perspective, Foster Moreau, they don't have worry there. So it makes sense that he slides in. After that, of course, you have Taysom Hill, who can play the tight end spot, but not to the same degree that somebody like Foster Moreau can. Then you start looking down the line. There's a few practice squad guys, obviously, that they have back there that can definitely fill, the body role, obviously, while they're, off the practice field now. But when they get back on it in training camp, you have that option. And then there's Dallin Holker. And Dallin Holker's extremely intriguing because we've been talking about him a lot since the Saints signed him as an undrafted rookie. And the caveat that everybody looked at, I remember filling in for Matt the Monday after the draft, and we spent an entire segment on Dallin Holker because there was a ranking, I believe it was from CBS Sports, or it might have been from NFL.com, where they went through and ranked the best undrafted rookies at each position. And Dallin Holker was the best tight end ranked. So, immediately from there, you look at it and go, all right, that's a guy you expect to compete to make this team. And then you see the financial commitment that the Saints make to him, which is $235,000 guaranteed to an undrafted rookie. And that, again, drives it home that, okay, this is a guy that you expect to make the team. Then tight ends coach Clancy Barone goes on the record during minicamp saying that they view Dallin Holker as an 8th round draft pick. Somebody that should have been drafted and fell into their lap. Again, you say, okay, that guy should make the team. And he probably will. By all accounts, He's had a great time during rookie minicamp, during OTAs, had his best day, according to multiple reports, here on Thursday. But Dennis Allen, when he met with the reporters, did kind of talk about still the unknown with Dallin Holker.
As I recall, there was some competition for the player. Exactly what that was, I'm not sure. But I do know that there were some other teams that were interested in him, and he felt like this would be a good opportunity for him. We got a couple of Colorado State coaches on our staff, so I don't know if that had anything to do with it or not. But yeah, look, he was certainly one of the guys in free agency that we targeted to go after once he wasn't available. Once he didn't get drafted.
So more on the unknown. What he kind of talked about is, and you hear this all the time in camp. We've played a lot of sound bites from Dennis Allen throughout OTAs, throughout minicamp, where he speaks on, they're not in pads. It's early. You can't really evaluate. There's not much to know. And that's where it comes in with Dallin Holker. The thing that they know about him is what he could do with the ball in his hands. He's a legit threat receiving from that spot, much like Juwan Johnson would be. I mean, Juwan Johnson's a converted receiver. Where they lack an understanding of what they might have in Dallin Holker is with the pads on, inline blocking, the physicality. Where is he with that? And they really won't know until they get into training camp and can put on the pads and can go full contact and have those team periods like that and really learn about the player more. And if he's the complete tight end package that they obviously hope for him to be, or if he is just more of that weapon in the passing game. Either way, he can help you here without Juwan Johnson and for the unlimited amount of time that you, or the unspecified amount of time that you don't have him. Whether it's, okay, you need a blocker, you can use Foster Moreau or Taysom Hill. You need somebody to really go out there and catch the ball, you could use Dallin Holker. Now, yes, you run the risk of becoming too predictable, obviously there, based on personnel, but he's a guy that you've committed a lot to financially. There's still that unknown, but you expect to contribute because of the commitments that you made, because of what Dennis Allen said, that cut the competition that there was for the player in free agency and things of that nature. So that's definitely an option. Then there's the wild card, and the wild card is Jimmy Graham. Because you look at the New Orleans Saints and you look at potential free agency and tight end, and it's a really soft market. That's why we'll talk about Taysom Hill's contract restructure. You look at that in this context where people can see that and be like, oh, maybe they did that to free up space for a tight end. They didn't need to do that to free up space for a tight end because there's no names. There's no names available really tight end wise that would command money in free agency. The Saints had plenty enough if they wanted to go sign somebody anyway. Jimmy Graham's the wild card for a lot of different reasons. Obviously, first and foremost is the interview he gave to Kat Terrell on Wednesday at ESPN, where he was asked about retirement and wouldn't close the door on a return to the New Orleans Saints. Jimmy Graham said something along the lines of, I'll retire when they want me to retire. If they want me to come back, I'll come back. If they want me to retire, I'll retire. I'll call them and let them tell me. Well, now the Saints might need you. And isn't timing a funny thing where he gives that interview and the very next day, it's announced that Juwan Johnson needs surgery. You could be reading too much into that. I could be reading too much into that, but it's hard to not make that comparison. It's hard to not make that inference, right? There's the familiarity aspect of it. We all know Jimmy Graham's, history with the New Orleans Saints. We don't need to run through that. He was with them last year in a limited role. Obviously, he'd have to come in and maybe start from behind and learn this new offense, or maybe he's known about this for a few weeks, and that's why the timing works out so well with that interview. And maybe he's been preparing. Who knows? I don't know that. You don't know that. Jimmy Graham knows that. And it remains to be seen if the Saints even go down that path with him. But that's the option in free agency, and that's the wild card really to this whole thing. Just because of the unknown with Dallin Holker. You know what you have in Jimmy Graham. Yes, he's an aging player, 37 years old. He'd be 38 in November. But it's a guy who the organization knows and can easily go in there and pick things up, and you don't need him every down. You could use him very much in a role like you did in 2023. They have options. The one thing that they don't have is Juwan Johnson for an indefinite amount of time. But I think while you can look at it and be like, man, they're really thin, they are but the options that they have, they feel good about. You just have to figure out a little bit more about some of them. And if that's not to your liking, you have your wild card in Jimmy Graham, who has gone on the record and said, anytime they need me to come back, I'll be there. Pick up the phone, I'll be there. So they have options. And it'll be very interesting to see which ones they take going forward. Juwan Johnson needs surgery on his foot. He's out for an indefinite amount of time. The hope is he's back for the season opener, but we'll see.
Hey, thanks so much for watching. Please leave your comments. I love to interact. And be sure to hit the red subscribe button below.